Here we go. All right, so tonight is a question and answer, which is my favorite Thursday night meditation talk. And you guys out there in the internet, make sure that you guys submit your questions in the comment section. I've already got one from somebody out who I believe is flying from Texas. Almost made it to meditation class, but not quite. So I'll answer her question. But again, I'll give my standard disclaimer that this is not the gospel. This is the gospel according to Sifu. This is from my experience, what works for me, what I understand. And if you ask me again in 10 years, I'll give you a much better, very different answer. But this is where we are right now. And everybody watching in the future, looking back on this talk, I'd like to thank you for looking at my Facebook page to see what stuff was like in the past. And I hope you're enjoying your flying cars. So, I'm going to start with a question from one of our students, which is about group meditation. And there are several reasons why we have a meditation class here. One of the reasons is for my own selfish needs, so that I know that I'm going to be meditating. I know that I've got a time where I for sure got to meditate, and it's very valuable to have that in your life, like a set schedule of meditation. But there's also something that's really nice about meditating in a group. And so if you've never meditated in a group, you've only done it at home, you've noticed that it is sometimes a little bit easy for your focus to wander and for you to get maybe a little bit more tired or a little bit more complacent with your meditation. But if you go to meditate in a group, you will recognize a difference. One of the main differences being there's like an energy to the room. There's an energy to the environment. They say there's a vibration, and I'm not sure how much of that is, happening in reality or how much of it is happening in your head, but I know that the effect is real because I've had that experience many times where I notice that I'm sitting in a group of people and I just sit up a little bit straighter and I make sure that I'm more still. I think some of it is to make sure that I'm not annoying anybody else. Nobody can hear me move. I don't distract anybody. Steve Brown told us a story once where he was sitting in a group of like hundreds of people once, I believe when he was in India, and he was just having a great meditation, and then at some point he felt like a weird energy in the room, and he was compelled to open his eyes and look, and he saw somebody out in front of him like scratching and moving around, and didn't even make a sound, but still the energy disturbed his meditation. So remember that when you're in meditation, sit still so you don't mess with anybody else. But I think some of it just like being around other people who are meditating, of course in the long run, being in an environment like this, it serves to better motivate us and keep us, on task. And when you're spending time with people who are doing the same thing as you, this has a comforting feeling. This has a feeling of like, yeah, we're in this together. And then in the moment, it has a tendency to make you just be more focused, more disciplined with your mind. And this is a really common thing. So if you experience that and you say to yourself, I should only meditate in groups of people, well, that is severely going to limit your opportunities to meditate. So don't let that happen. Meditate as often as you can, whenever you feel the need, and very often when you don't feel the need, whether or not you're around people. And just recognize the difference. I'm meditating in a group of people, it feels this way, it has this kind of a sensation. I meditate on my own, it has this different kind of a feeling. So I like to think of it sometimes as like the difference between a private class or a class with a very small number of people in it and a big class with a huge number of people in it. Small class, it has a different kind of energy. There's a little bit of one-on-one attention. There's a little bit more like I can see exactly what you're doing, so you're really aware of that. And the big class has this energy that you're getting from everybody else in the dojo. So the mat certainly has a different kind of vibration when the dojo is filled with people. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
I have so many questions, I don't know which one.
Choose one. Choose the one that pops in your head first. Now.
First one because you mentioned it, but I have a more abstract question. But this one is, you talk about big groups versus small groups, and when it's a big group, the energy is more chaotic because there's more like different types of energy.
Mhm.
So how do you stay focused and grounded? That could be in the dojo, that could be in a public setting. I mean, how do you use like the meditation skills or martial arts skills to stay focused? I think I already know the answer, but
Great.
I'd
Well,
like
I'll
to
try
hear
to give you something that you
it.
don't know. So I'm in a big group of people, and it's kind of chaotic. You're talking about maybe noise, maybe physical, like people moving around, maybe I'm even getting bumped into. There's just a lot, there are many factors to take into consideration, much more than when I'm just by myself. And how do I use my practice, physical practice, meditation, mindfulness, maybe Tai Chi, in order to be focused? Is it about being aware? Is it about being calmer and more peaceful?
It's I tend to be aware of my surroundings, but try not to allow disruptive energies to like shake me off.
So is it almost like an anxiety or like a stress of being around a bunch of people?
Not really, but like you said, safe around, there's certain people that emit a
Oh.
disturbing
So,
energy.
so your question is, when I'm around certain people, they kind of get underneath my skin. Maybe that's a slightly different question, but you're gonna find in many different situations. We'll use this one as the example, but in many different situations, you've got, you know, I've got my bubble of comfort. I'm moving through the world and through life, and everything is pretty nice as long as I'm in my comfort bubble. The comfort bubble could be physical space. It could be the amount of noise that I'm in. It could be the physical activity or the mental activity that I'm doing. It could be, where I am just in my house versus out and about. It could be me driving feels really comfortable for me, but we've got our bubble of comfort. And the thing about the bubble of comfort is it is a bubble. It's easily popped. It's not an iron box of comfort. That doesn't sound very comfortable, but my point is that it doesn't take much usually to throw us off a little bit. And so the way that we use our practice, well, we could go in a few different directions, but the way that I'll talk about tonight is being uncomfortable and being used to it. And this is kind of going into something that I was talking about in the kids class today. So I have my bubble of comfort, and I will tell you this about me. I am not easily perturbed or stressed or thrown off. And part of that might be my nature, but I think most of it is something that I've just trained myself to be like. And it's usually pretty helpful. But there are a few things that throw me off pretty much every time. The one that is a guarantee is temperature. If it is cold, I am thrown. I hate the cold. And I know right now that I'm reinforcing that, but I'm just going to do it again. I hate the cold. And this is one of the reasons why I live in Los Angeles, because this is the dead of winter, and I'll say it seems pretty cold even for winter in LA, but it's like, 70 degrees or close to it during the day. At night, it's too cold, so you gotta bundle up when you leave the dojo at night. But I started my process a couple days ago of making my New Year's resolutions and thinking about what am I going to do this year that's different. Because I do some of the same stuff every year. It's, how I'm eating, my general physical health, my meditation for my mental health. But something else, like what am I going to do that's going to make this year different? What's going to be like my adventure for this year? So my adventure this year is to do something every day that makes me uncomfortable. And it was New Year's Day, having freshly made this resolution, that I was invited by somebody to go to a polar bear event or the polar bear club or whatever it is. When you get in the water and it's too cold. And even in LA, the ocean, well, first of all, year round, the ocean is too cold for me to get into. I mean, I literally get in the ocean fewer than 5 times. I know because I can always count the number of times on my hand. But this day was cold. It was cold in the air and it was cold in the water. It was 53 degrees, which some people will laugh at, but I will tell you, 53 degrees feels pretty much the same as 32 degrees, which feels pretty much the same as negative 32 degrees. It's just too cold. And I decided this is it. This is the perfect thing for me to do because it just fell in my lap. Somebody invited me. Today I'm going. This is my first opportunity to do something uncomfortable. And the reason that I'm usually not perturbed by things is because of martial arts practice. Like, I'm just constantly putting myself into situations where I'm uncomfortable and then I have to force myself to be okay with that feeling of discomfort and then to be comfortable with it. But this is one of those things that is outside of my normal realm of discomfort. So I drove myself all the way down to San Pedro, and I just knew if I give myself a chance to psych myself out, I will. So I just got out of the car and I walked straight over, just like peeling my shirt off and like just jumped right in the water. I just ran in the water. I jumped in, I submerged my head, I got back out, and I said, "That's it, I'm good," and I just ran back out. And I've got a little certificate that says Polar Bear Club something something. This day it was this cold, and I put it in my bathroom right up next to the mirror, so every day I look at it and I remember this is the year of doing something that makes me uncomfortable. I'm just going to do something like this. It doesn't have to be physical discomfort. It could be something emotionally, mentally. It could be just something that I've never done before that really kind of gives me pause, and especially the stuff where I think, oh, I don't want to do that, where you start talking yourself into all the reasons why I really shouldn't do this, or I really don't need to do this. That's the stuff that I know I've got to make myself do. So, coming back to your question, dealing with that, you've got your bubble of comfort. It pops. Here I am out in the world without my bubble anymore. I've got to get used to that if I'm going to not be shaken, if I'm not going to be perturbed in that situation. So make yourself uncomfortable on the regular. Choose to make yourself uncomfortable. And part of that is putting yourself in an environment like the dojo where you're constantly challenged and pushed. Some of it is just taking that out into the rest of life. And there are tons of stories that go into this idea. The one that you guys have heard before is the monk who asks the senior monk at the monastery and says, "Sir, I'm having a terrible time meditating. My meditation is so frantic, and I'm not focused. It's bad." And so he says, the senior monk says, "Come to me the next day, tomorrow at dawn. I'll show you my favorite place to meditate." And so they leave the monastery and they go through the mountains, and the young monk thinks, "Oh, we're going to go to the mountains and meditate in a cave in the snow, and it's going to be all peaceful and serene and quiet." And they just keep walking, and he thinks, "Oh, we're going to go into the woods and meditate next to a babbling brook, and I'll be soothed by the sounds of nature." And they keep walking, and they go into town, and the senior monk leads the young monk into the busiest part of town. They sit in the marketplace where everybody is yelling and bumping into them, and it's noisy and annoying, and they sit and they meditate. And the idea there is, if I can do it here amidst discomfort, then I can do it anywhere. And we don't want to only be able to meditate, although that's one of the hardest things to do. Certainly, if you can meditate and stay calm in a situation like that, then you can do lots of other things. But put yourself, purposefully sometimes do that and see how that goes. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
Dean has one.
Great.
What do you do when your meditation is completely hijacked by a strong emotion or thoughts about something that's really troubling? Like you can barely keep it together, much less follow the breath. Should you ever just stop and come back later? Or maybe conversely try to sort of lean into the thought or the emotion?
Yeah, so Dino is good for a meditation question like this. I'll tell you what it depends completely on what your goal is. So if your goal is, I'm dealing with a really strong emotion, and I've been dealing with it all day long, and I'm tired of it, I need a break from it, then you want to be able to transcend it in that moment and just let it go. And if your goal is, like I've had this goal recently, to be able to fully experience an emotion, I might just allow myself to lean into it and fully experience it. And what you notice, if you allow that to happen, oftentimes it'll pass. It'll pass even more easily. So everyone's had this experience, right, where you get a song stuck in your head. And my favorite way of dealing with it is I will go through the whole song in my head, and then done, the end, that's it. I just let it go, and I move on to whatever else there is. If I'm meditating and I have a song that gets stuck in my head, oftentimes I'll just go through the rest of the song. Sometimes I'll speed it up. I'm like, let's get through this thing. I speed up the whole thing, get to the end, and then that's it. Usually if you get stuck on something, it's because you're like replaying that little part of it, like I'm replaying the chorus, the catchy part over and over and over again. But if I allow it to go through all of its ups and downs and then settle at the end, it's a natural finish, and my mind can move on more easily. So I think that an emotional state can be the same way. And usually I would just say, in meditation, the idea is I'm just going to let all of that go. As soon as an emotional state comes up, I just immediately let it go. But sometimes that can have the feeling like I'm forcing it out. So we don't want to do that either. You don't want to have the emotional state come up and then say, no, I've got to let you go right now. Even trying to let something go quickly is basically the same thing as forcing it out. So you can try it. Allow yourself to feel this completely. I had a meditation a couple weeks ago. I sat there and cried. I cried, and it wasn't even about, I mean, it was precipitated by something in particular, even though my life is generally pretty rosy. It was precipitated. It was caused by a thing, an event. And then it just kind of became like, hey, this is nice to just like be really emotional and experience this emotion of sadness that I don't usually experience. I just sat there and cried for like 10 minutes, and then it went away, and I just moved on and had a really nice meditation after that. It's not wrong, and nor is it wrong to feel like, you know what, I don't feel like feeling that feeling right now. So I'm just going to allow it to go right away. But as soon as we start to force things to happen, as soon as we put like a time limit on it, it's got to happen in this frame, or we start to get upset at ourselves for having that feeling and for ruining the meditation, all that just exacerbates the whole situation. So just feel it and let it go and enjoy it. Sometimes leaning into an emotion is important. Now, if that is happening on a regular basis, and every time I sit, my mind starts to create an emotion for me to really feel, and then that is, leading me into thought, and I'm really not meditating, I'm just always just sitting there and thinking about the things that are making me emotional and feeling the emotion, then what you've got yourself into is a sneaky cycle where your brain is actually not allowing you to meditate because you've given into it too many times, so your mind knows now. And it could be that with emotion, it could be that with lots of different things where your ego is very tricky. It is super smart, and it knows exactly how to get exactly how to get you out of a meditative state of mind by bringing up the things that you allow it to do. So sometimes it does it with a physical sensation. You get the same itch every time I meditate, or every time I meditate my hip hurts the same exact way. It's because you've given into it, you've moved your hip, or you've scratched, or whatever, and your mind knows, I know exactly what to do. As soon as we sit to meditate, we're going to make that itch happen, we're going to make that hip hurt, and if you just refuse to give into it, sometimes that in and of itself is the best thing to do with a meditation, to stay mentally strong and focused on it. But part of the point of meditation can be to really open up your heart and experience emotion and feel things in a deeper way, in a more profound way. So you can allow that to happen. It's not wrong. Other question? Yes, ma'am. We'll make this the last one.
I start on New Year's morning. I woke up. I didn't have anywhere to be, so I sat and meditated. I didn't.
Beautiful.
I didn't set the alarm,
Mm-hmm.
and I just sat. And then after some time, I felt like I was done, so I stopped. And I was very curious to see how long it ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
So I checked the clock. It was 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a good meditation in the sense that I was pretty much, like I woke up kind of wheezing, so I was trying to kind of fix my breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get deep. But I just really liked the fact that there wasn't this artificial time that I put on myself.
Sure.
What do you think about that when, we don't have to go to work or have somewhere to be?
Yeah, this is the year of you living easy. Not putting so much pressure on myself to do exactly this way. Got it, great. So first of all, let me say, there's no such thing as a bad meditation on some level, and you know this, because as long as I'm sitting and meditating, that is a good thing. So my mental state could be the way that I wanted it to be. My mental state could be very calm and focused, or my mental state could be all over the place. But any meditation is automatically by default good, right? And any day that you have meditated is a good day. And if you think of it that way, you have a lot of good days. As long as you meditate, like it's pretty easy. So now I've got my way that I meditate every day is I set my timer and I meditate for X number of minutes and I do it the same way and it's starting to feel a little bit stale. Should I mix it up? Yeah. Should I sometimes, just completely not use the timer at all? Or should I just experiment with that? Maybe for this month of the new year, I'm not going to set a timer at all. I'm just going to meditate, see how it goes. Sure. And a lot of you don't have periods of time that are built into your life on the regular where you can just sit and not have to worry about when you're done. I do. I don't have kids yet. I don't have very many responsibilities outside the dojo. And even when I'm here, I've got pockets of time where I can just sit and meditate. So one thing that I suggest you do is design your life with more periods of time like that when you can sit without interruption, where you can sit and let it be open-ended like that, because it is a different kind of feeling. And this just goes outside of the idea of meditation as well. If your life is fully structured and you know exactly where you're supposed to be and exactly what you're supposed to do at any given time, that can be a great thing, as long as you schedule time to do nothing. If you have not scheduled any time to just be, whether it's meditating or walking through the woods or just vegging out in front of TV or having a conversation with somebody you haven't talked to in a while, then life is going to get really overwhelming. And the more things that we are up to in our lives, the harder that can be. But it's incredibly important. The more busy you are, the more responsibility you have, the more important you are, or the more people that you are important to, the more important it is for you to have that time where I can just be. And it might be an hour. It might be like I've got from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. today. That's all that I've got. Okay, so just use that time well. Meditating, I would say that it is going to be very easy for you to meditate and start and end within an hour and not let that run away where you accidentally meditated for more than an hour. That probably wouldn't even happen to me, and I regularly every single week meditate for longer than an hour. This is the year that I'm going to be regularly meditating for 3 hours every week. But even then, I know when it's been more than an hour because my butt hurts or something is something hurts, or I can just tell my brain goes through these waves where I know that it's been longer than at least a certain amount of time. So you can do that. And I find that for me, what stops me from worrying about what there is to do next or what stops me from wondering, how long have I meditated for, or any of those thoughts that creep in, is to set a timer, because I know that as long as I've set it, I don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to meditate. And there is nothing else to do. There's nowhere to be. There's nothing to worry about, because this thing is going to wake me up out of my meditation when it's time to move on and do something else. And for some people, it's the opposite. Some people set the meditation timer and they're always thinking about the timer and they're wondering, did I set it right? Is it going to go off? Am I going to have to open my eyes and it's going to be way too long? Or, they're just stressed about the fact that there is something actually counting down. Or they're thinking, oh, why did I set the timer for 20 minutes? I don't feel like meditating for 20 minutes. I feel like being done now. And just the actual act of setting the timer can kind of thrust you into that way of being and way of thinking. And if that's the case, I suggest you get over it. But if you can't, then just don't set the timer. Just meditate. And you will usually find that the meditation will come to a natural conclusion when you start to feel like I can't do this anymore, or I feel like it's been enough time. And usually when you get to that time, you want to push through that and get to the next one, so that you're not getting used to giving into every time your mind says, we got to stop meditating. But allow it to happen. It's great. And you should not get into a rut with your practice in any way, and using the timer and then feeling stale about that is just another example of that. So sometimes I'll meditate in a different place, sometimes I'll meditate for a different amount of time, sometimes I'll meditate without the timer, sometimes I'll meditate after lighting a candle, sometimes I'll meditate, sitting in a different position or in a different chair or whatever. And usually I'll meditate in the same way. But it's interesting to go and meditate somewhere else and do something slightly different with it, because it helps to keep it fresh, and it's kind of keeps you on your toes with your meditation practice. So we will do that now and meditate, and you can sit exactly the way that you normally do, or you can sit slightly differently than you normally do. You don't have to set a timer because I'm your timer. I will tell you exactly when we're done. Sit comfortably.